Hi everyone, this is Sunette, and in this video I'm continuing sharing my experience of being asked a question, questions, what is your willingness to change and your willingness to learn? And, it also goes quite hand in hand with what you could maybe relate to is where just taking a look at myself, I often had a sense of thinking or believing that I need to feel motivated. I need to feel driven. I need to feel passionate about something to get my arse off a chair and just go and do it. And that would lead me to postpone, to wait, to mull in an internal depression as I sit and wait for motivation and passion and drive to kind of come my way, and pick me up and carry me to an action, toward an action to do it. So relating that to my experience within the willingness to change and the willingness to learn, I was doing the same thing. I was kind of like building up this energy, this feel, this experience of empowered willingness, waiting for that in a way to completely fulfill me and become me before I will actually act on changing through learning or walking the process of learning. I mean, there's quite a multidimensional way in which you can look at the interrelationship between change and learning. Because as you learn, you change, and as you change, you learn. So they literally go hand in hand. And that true changing and learning cannot happen without you actually putting yourself out there in this physical reality. So it's change, learning, and reality, living, that creates the total fulfillment of self-expansion, growth, evolution. Now, with having walked through all my experiences, let's break it down into the core points I'd like everyone to take with you. And this is, again, just going back to being shook, being shaken awake in that moment. You can look out for, when, and it takes some honesty inside yourself. Like with me, I had to really reflect on everything, because whenever my mind, my thoughts go to being angry at someone else in such moments or blaming, I use that as a reference for myself. Hey, this is a very important point you yourself need to look at. So I immediately take it back to myself. Because an interesting relationship I've gotten to know with how my thoughts work is whenever my thoughts want to blame and exert anger toward another person, it is actually showing an optimal opportunity for me to learn something about myself here. And I am actually, through blame and anger towards another, wanting to protect a self-betrayal, a deception, a lie that I'm trying to keep alive within myself. So the question I then have to ask myself is, where am I lying to myself, betraying or deceiving myself? And so after the phone conversation, I was still a bit shaken, and I had to take a breath and sit down with myself and go, okay, what's going on here? That's where I started writing and opening up all these dimensions that I'm sharing with you here. And getting to that shaking is one of the most difficult things, because you tend to want to just be angry at the person. Your mind keeps on wanting to find a reason why they should have done it a different way, or could have approached it another way, or didn't have to really say, well, I call bullshit, in that way, but also breaking down the way that he said it. It was perfect, because it was the way he said that shook me, that allowed all of this to open up. And so in the end of it, I was actually really grateful for that moment and for my capacity as well to not make it personal. and, really look at what he stood as in that moment for me as a support in my process to get to know myself a bit better. And this point that was really like a Pandora's box opening up inside of me. So whenever you have someone shake you, with what they say, like you, for example, say, well, I did this deed and I felt so good about myself and I feel like such a good person, and you kind of in that ask another, don't you think? And you can also hear in a voice, you want to get noticed, get their attention, be pleased. And they say, well, I don't really think one act defines you as a good person, and you get shaken up by the words. You want to get angry at them and blame them. It's those type of moments where you've got to reflect and go, okay, wait a minute. Who was I when I asked the question? What was I looking for? Why am I reacting like this? What would it really mean to be a good person? Maybe I should expand my view. Doing one deed in a year, might need some personal investigation. So here, that is one aspect to have a look at that has really assisted and supported me throughout my life. To not make things personal and react to other people when I get shaken. And secondly is to have a look at who you are when you answer people, especially those who, you do to an extent have a respect for. You to an extent also depend on them. You have a relationship where you know the importance of them in your life. And sometimes because of the value we do place on our relationship with people, we know we need and require. What can happen, is you tend to want to please and present yourself as being more than, kind of those you seek approval from because for you it's important. And what can happen there is you can project a false facade, and which actually really doing a detriment and a disservice to your relationship with them, because how can they really help you and you really help yourself if they're not really helping you? They're more helping an idea that you're trying to project, and then you're not truly going to benefit from that equal and one relationship and support. And this is something I realized as well. That day I realized, goodness, if I'm going to continue lying to myself and to him in this relationship, this conversation that we're having, then I'm not really being vulnerable and open to the things I really need to work on in myself and my life. And he's not really going to get to know me, which means his skills I'm not going to be able to benefit from all of his skills, his techniques, his, in intellect that he's gathered throughout his life. So, and I only have so much time. So what I've done from there, I sat down with myself. What I wrote out is a self-agreement in my relationship with him at the time. And I said to myself, okay, who am I going to be and assist and support myself to be? Because obviously it's not going to change immediately. I will read that agreement I made with myself every time before I have the chat or a conversation with him. And what I agreed with myself is not being afraid to expose the things about myself that I was even afraid to admit to me, that I was hiding from myself. And that also took some writing, some time with myself where I had to look at my reality and say, okay, girl, what are you not changing? Now's the time. It's now or never. I had that opportunity right there and then to look at myself and my reality, raw and real, and make sure in detail I'm not hiding things anymore or trying to hide. So I went person to person, relationship to relationship. I inside myself walked my whole day, had a look at the fine-tuned moments. I just magnified everything said, and I started writing it down. Like a real Sherlock Holmes BI, checking things out in absolute detail. Not so much deducing, but checking the facts of my reality. So getting to grips with the facts, writing the facts down so that I can only deal with the facts. And was I nervous to continue the conversations? I mean, yes. I mean, it's not like I opened everything up, with this individual. I mean, this personal side of myself and my life is my process to walk. But what I have been doing in the conversations is just, when the questions are asked, I first check within myself. Okay, what is the reality of me? I just changed that one thing. I made sure I'm not trying to project a false facade. And it still sometimes happened. There's a point where I can even feel in the holding the phone, my body go, "Ugh," and then I have to sit back and go, what are the facts? And I say it, and it's not easy to say. It feels uncomfortable, It doesn't feel nice to speak the things that you've been living, but bizarrely been trying to hide and ignore. And it is difficult to speak them because you know that when you speak them, you're facing them and there's no turning back. And it's going to happen. You're going to have to walk through it, through the consequence that you've been resisting. And most of the time, it's not as bad as we make it out to be in our minds, fascinatingly enough. For most of it, I was like, well, why did I wait so long to deal with these things when the solutions were actually as easy as a snap of the fingers? But because I've been hiding it for so long, it becomes a big thing in our minds because we, project so much emotion onto our troubles that they turn out to be these mountains when actually they're but a sand grain. All right, everyone, we'll continue more in the next video. Thank you very much.